What's your carnal theory?
Hi everyone, I'm Abba.
And I'm Amanda. And today we're talking with Citra Benazir, author of Pleasure Girls and the founder of 'Tis the Life. Not only is she an active volunteer with some of the biggest feminist movements and organizations in Indonesia, she also uses her platform to support women and girls to speak out on topics such as sexual assault and harassment, as well as the importance of education and women's rights around the world. Citra, thank you and welcome to Carnal Theory.
Thank you for having me.
Could you tell us what the theory is that you have brought for us today?
The polarities of masculine and feminine energies are completely separate from our construct of gender.
I love it.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think many people hear masculine and feminine. They just automatically assign gender to it, which means gender roles, all the constructs that come with it. Here's what it means to be masculine. Here's what it means to be feminine. And don't you dare move outside of those boxes or it'll be confusing. We're getting into times where that's a lot more fluid. So in terms of what you feel like those mean to our personal energies, how does that relate and resonate with you? Why was this something that you wanted to bring to the table?
Well, because even though in one hand it is becoming more fluid, but in another hand, in places like Indonesia, where everything is constructed and everything is limited by religion and the government and culture itself, I think it's actually becoming more stated where women should be and what men should do, and even in roles in modern relationships, in what I see in just relationships that are close to me, with my friends who are expecting so much out of their boyfriends, expecting so much out of their girlfriends. And it's amazing for me to see, because growing up, I wasn't really raised with such notion in mind. I guess because I'm an only child. And in addition to that, I'm an only grandchild and niece in my whole entire family. So I guess my family just wanted me to be, as tough as possible, as independent as possible. And they didn't actually say that those points were masculine.
How do you think that relate in relationship to our personal energies? These terms, masculine and feminine, do you feel like those terms end up influencing the energy that we put out?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I'm 24. Maybe it's still young, but I've had a few relationships where it wasn't this way. This is my first relationship that has been such empowering and open. But before this, all of those expectation and biases and stereotypes in being a woman in a relationship with a man, it's like all of those expectation and roles are just such a burden to us, and it influences our self-worth, how we look at ourselves. And it was just every day was like putting on a show, or going on a date would be like going to work. So there was no room to be free or explore ourselves as we grow older with each other.
You mentioned your activism, and I really want to talk about that. You've started a few things now. Can you talk about when you started your first activism measures and what made you start?
Well, for volunteering, I've always thought that I've always wanted to help, from elementary school. When I was in Ukraine, there was a community service points that we had to do. So I think it all started from there, where I could see that even a little kid, can make a difference, And it started by helping out in garage sales and bake sales and stuff, and up to helping out in animal shelters. And also for in Ukraine, when I was there, we had a big anniversary for the Chernobyl incident, so we raised money for that. But I brought that back home when Women's March Jakarta started. I remember that clearly because...
and when was that?
The first one happened in 2017. And it wasn't that long after the Women's March in the States.
Yeah.
After he got elected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think that just was the catalyst for me. And I've always wanted to help out home. And I found this, amazing women who now become my, colleagues and friends. And we were all fighting for the same thing. And we were all different generations, intersectional, my queer friends, my male survivors. And anything, we were fighting for the same thing, because even though the Women's March happened in the States because of one particular person, but here it turns out that, you know, there was so many things wrong in our constitution and in our, you know, rights that women and minorities were not given. So that's when I started helping out even more in like the sexual assault community, harassment community, and I'm the co-director for Hollaback Jakarta, which is a branch from the state as well, where we've been focusing on public harassment.
Which is a branch from the what?
From the States. From the States as well. There is a Hollaback in the States. I forgot which city it started on. But, you know, public harassment in public transportations, we've had researches about that where, you know, girls ranging from wearing all niqab and hijab are still getting catcalled with the girls who are wearing short skirts and mini skirts and, you know, tank tops. So there's no putting that research out there. And also we have rules where women are not allowed to walk home alone after a certain time at night. Also, we're fighting for that, like for workers who are, you know, female workers who gets night shifts and stuff. If they walk home just to go home, then she shouldn't get fined for that, right? You know, stuff like that. We've been really dealing with that on top of injustice for like our queer friends, especially our trans peers.
Do you know if there's any movements or efforts to be made to educate the people who need to be educated to get these changes? So, you know, we know it's not about what you're wearing. It's about the education and intention of the person who is willing to assault or catcall or whatever the instance is. Do you know if there's efforts being made to address that in school, to say that is not allowed, that is not permissible, that should not even be a notion in your mind?
Yeah. Well, there's no official movement that are doing that yet, mainly because every time a movement gets big and wants to push into like governments and schools and, you know, the national system, they get stomped back. So it's not like the activists are not doing anything, but we're constantly being shut down. That's been on my mind so much lately, because as an activist, you don't want to be an activist for like 24/7. You get burnt out and you get tired of saying the same things. You know, it's not the victim's fault. They're still doing that. But I think I'm so afraid that these movements are creating a circle more like a clique where we keep talking to the same people. Our audience are already woke. You know, the ones that are catcalling me at night are these older men who don't have internet probably, or just watch television. So that's what I want to push forwards to a mainstream view. In televisions, there's still sexist jokes, you know, fat phobia. The women are supposed to be, you know, there are only two types of women when you see Indonesian television, like ones that are funny and ones that are so pretty that she can only be seen as pretty. So it's horrible, but the majority of people that are doing that don't get the same access and resources that we do. You know, that's why I keep, you know, it's worrying that me and my friends are only talking to the same people. I think that's why we need to probably brainstorm with other activists all over the world how they're doing that, you know, managing that.
Fortunately, we can see that, like, even if you are raised in a certain way, as hard as it is, we can see examples of just because you're raised a certain way doesn't mean you can't change your mind. I can speak to my grandmother. My grandmother raised in a time where racism was what you did. And to break against that was breaking against everything that was ingrained in her. And throughout her life, she did. Kind of, my parents, even their generation, similarly, they were brought up where segregation was still very prevalent. And, you know, the terms that they had to deal with and come to throughout their lives are things that, you know, that they worked on. And they are not racist, like just because they were raised that way doesn't mean they are. And I think that applies to so many other fields. And a lot of that has to do with the education and exposure that you're given, which is a huge part of what we're about, which is like, okay, if you're taught sex education, if you're taught empowerment at whatever age, we would advocate for as early as possible. But even if you're in your 20s or 30s where it's pretty established already, 40s, 50s, whatever, it doesn't mean that you cannot shift your mindset and expectation and therefore work through whatever you might be repressed, depressed, suppressing, and then change both your mindset and therefore your actions about things. And so I'm curious what sex education looks like, what that was for you. Maybe it might have been different for you, maybe it wasn't, versus what the average person gets.
There are no sex education schools. Sex education for us was born for boys talking about their experiences out loud to each other, or catcalls. But even when I was in Ukraine, I had sex education for a bit, but that was never properly spoken at home. Where at home it was just like, okay, you got the knowledge, you got everything. Now you're expected to behave or act upon that knowledge. My parents were extremely trustful with me, with boyfriends and everything, even though I was going through it myself. Me watching porn at such a young age, worrying through pregnancy scares from sexual acts that cannot end in pregnancy, actually. But it was such a fear-based for me, and I couldn't just talk about it with my parents, especially with my dad. Period-wise, body-wise, my mom was still on top of that, and my parents were just interested in the boys that I liked, or all that, the gossip stuff, but not the actual what's in my mind, what the questions that I still had. And internet was such a big help, but it's not as wide and array like we had now. So the basic sex education in Indonesian schools are not comprehensive at all. They're not taught in schools as much as we want to.
Citra, thank you so much. We want to help push out your new book, and we'll be in touch when that comes out. Congratulations. And thank you for talking with us. This has been a grehave conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for always, talking to me and supporting me. And you have an amazing platform, and I'm so lucky to have found you.
Thank you. And if anyone wants to reach out to us with questions or insights, you can do so by reaching out to us through our Instagram page at Carnal Theory or at My Sex Bio. And definitely go check out and follow Citra's work on her Instagram pages at the Arctic Benazir or at pleasuregirls_, also at tis.thelife, life with a Y. Those are her 3 platforms. So definitely go check her out and follow her there. Thank you all so much.
Carnal Theory is produced by My Sex Bio. Our sound design is by Audrey Cohane, and our theme music by Min the Universe. My Sex Bio is an educational platform built to empower people like you to take command of your sexual biography. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, and Spotify at My Sex Bio. Visit our website and join our e-letter at mysexbio.org and support our work by joining our Patreon. Thank you.